My name's Jeff, and today we're going to have a quick look at how to combine your basic minor pentatonic scales with a blues and also with your chromatic scales as well. Now, as a beginner guitarist, when you tend to learn any improvisation, when you tend to learn scales, you always seem to look at the pentatonic scale, which is fine, a little bit boring at times, and it's kind of very staid, and sometimes when you learn you tend to find that you're rigidly sticking to that pentatonic scale. Now, it's no hardship to learn a couple of other different scales as well, but it's how you use them, it's how you use them together. When I play, what I tend to try and do is mix and match. Now, when I first started playing, we were always told that you have to play on, when you're learning a scale, you have to stick to those notes in the scale. Not the case. The best part of the guitar is the fact when you're learning, you can actually hit any note as long as you know how to resolve above or below that note to get back into the key that you're playing. Let me give you an example. Right, we'll start off with the main pentatonic. We're doing it in the key of A. Most people would learn this scale right at the beginning of their guitar tuition, and it plays like this. So that's one octave, and then we carry it on. Okay, so that's the pentatonic scale, the minor pentatonic scale in the key of A. This is the minor blues scale in the key of A. One octave. Okay, 2 octaves. Right, so you've got the 2 scales there. Minor pentatonic. Blues. Right. Now you have these notes. Nasty. On their own, they're dreadful. But these are what we call the blues notes, the flattened fifth. Some of you will recognise that from the kind of Hendrix sounds as well. Hendrix used to use a lot of these kind of flattened fifth notes in his playing, as well as just what we class as passing notes. You're going from one to the other, you're getting across. And this is what happens when you play a blues scale. You do this little walking bit. Now, if for example I'm improvising over the key of A, which is what we're doing at the moment, I'm playing against an A minor backing track. If I start off on that note and don't go anywhere else for a little bit, it's not going to sound very good. But if you use it within the mix of your solos, so for example, if I'm playing just a standard pentatonic riff, so I might start with something like that. So all I'm doing is walking. Nothing to that really. I think most of us that have been playing the guitar for a bit, we can all kind of get our fingers around that. But if I start adding that blues note into that mix as well, suddenly it just adds a little bit more zest, a little more spice to our riff that we're playing. So if I was to kind of then elaborate that a little bit more, so we've got our pentatonic riff. Let's just do something like only using the centre 4, so okay, pretty boring, but let's just see if we can add now the blues note. Now, a minute ago I played the blues scale, 1 octave. That's the next blues note in the next scale, next part of the scale. So, I've got my riff. I'm going to use this blues note here, so I'm going to go. Suddenly, just by moving out of that basic pentatonic scale and just hitting that blues note, we add a little bit more depth to our solos, and it just makes it sound a bit more spiced up and more kind of a firework in its playing as well. So if we elaborate that even more and start adding maybe this next, the lower flattened fifth of the scale. So we've got doing here is just kind of playing the same notes, but using that as a kind of a root. So I'll keep going back to that as a little motive, and then just adding these little blues notes in together. Now by doing that, suddenly you're not playing a lot more than probably what you would do if you're just playing a pentatonic, obviously, but just by adding its note selection, and it's also note placement. So let me just demonstrate that in a with a backing track that we're going to use. And it's just going to be an A minor backing track. Nothing too taxing. You can noodle around there to your heart's content, but try it. Try and see if you can add some of these blues notes into it. Once you've got your blues notes in there, you can start adding more, and that's what we'll look at next. Okay, so we've utilised our blues scale and blues notes into our riff, but what about something else to make it sound even more out there, and just to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more, what's the word? I'm looking for a word that's going to kind of elaborate something that makes it sound just so much more professional. I think that's what we're trying to look for here. So, scale-wise, we've got our minor pentatonic, we've got our blues scale. What about our chromatic scale? Now, chromatic scales are basically you play every note within a 12-note octave, 12-note range. Now, what I mean by that is if I just walk up to I'm not overly fussed about what notes I'm hitting, just to demonstrate this basically every note going up what we call a semitone. So a semitone is every step or every fret, I suppose. Just for reference, when someone says to you a semitone, they just mean the note above, or if they say a tone, it's 2 notes above, so it's 2 frets away from where you first started. Okay, so now we've got some extra little notes that we can put into our mix. Now the beauty of this is you can pretty much hit any note on the guitar, as long as I said at the beginning, you can resolve back to a note that fits nicely with the backing track that you're playing, the key that you're in. If it doesn't, it's going to sound like a car crash, to be quite honest. And that's something where, over time, the more you play, the more confident you are, the more you'll kind of have a foresight of what's coming next. So when you're playing, when you're improvising, you'll find that you'll know, not necessarily by actually hitting the note, but by your ear, by getting used to playing it time and time again, is that you'll know not to touch those notes at certain points within your improvising that you tend to do. So, if you remember, we go back to the riff that we learned before. So again, these riffs are very kind of flexible, and you can learn them in your own way. You don't have to copy them exactly, but what I'm trying to do is just demonstrate how I kind of work, and the fact that, you know, by putting a series of these notes together, and also it depends on the backing track that you're playing over. You need to kind of get to the feel. You need to understand the feel, the rhythm, and that all comes into the mix. So there's no rules necessarily to riffing, soloing. It's how it works for you, how it works with the music, and actually how exciting you can make it. And it's also not about speed. I think one of the big misnomers as a guitarist is, you know, the faster you play, the better you are. That's rubbish, really. It's not about the speed that you play, it's the touch and feel that become very important. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So beforehand we had our minor pentatonic in A. Then we added the blues notes from that scale in the key of A. So there's two of the notes here. So now just by adding that, what they call the flattened fifth, that note there, it sounds a bit more edgy. Alright? Fine. What about the rest? So let's have a look at a scale. So our minor pentatonic, as we should know, okay, but what if I did this, for example? So I may start the lowest part of the scale, walk up, and then onto the next part, go back to our normal pentatonic part of the scale. So we go. Okay, straight away it just adds a little bit more to the scale that we're playing, and actually it gives us so much more choice of notes that we can play. So same principle there, but I might add something else into the mix as well. So I might keep, for example, that part of the pentatonic scale, but then on this fret, on the D string, we might go 5, 6, 7, 8. We might stick that note in as well. So we've got. Now, straight away, it sounds like a new form of a scale, which it is a scale really, but it's just a series of notes put together chromatically. Chromatically means going up a step at a time, as we are here. So that doesn't mean anything, to be quite honest, until we put it to a riff or some music as well. So what I might do, let's just go back to what I did before. I've got. Okay, something like that, but what I might do this time is think about, let's add a few more little notes into it. So, back to my pentatonic, just to kind of ground everything so I know exactly where I am. Yeah, let's do this bit. So, from here, normally I'd carry on with the scale and we finish down there, but I'm going to use these notes. That scale. So any one of those notes, as well as that blues note we had a minute ago. So suddenly I've got a lot more I can do with this. So I'll do something like this. Okay, opens up our world a little bit more as a guitar player here. Now, again, it doesn't really have any context because I'm not playing it over anything. But if I stick it on a backing track, if I stick it over a backing track, you'll see what I mean by this. Okay, so as you can see there, by adding some of those chromatic notes, you could basically noodle up and down that little section of the guitar, or anywhere you like really, as long as you can resolve back to a safe note that comes from within the rhythm or the chord sequence that you're playing against. Now, I made a few mistakes on that, and that's part and parcel of the course, so I'm literally just winging it a little bit here, but just to show you how easy it is actually just to be able to play pretty much any note on the guitar as long as you place it in the right place, or put it in the right place, should I say. Now, technically, what you're actually doing when you're moving across the chord sequence, because that chord sequence there is A minor, D minor, and E minor. So that's the classic kind of 3 chords trick, a 12-bar blues. And what you're actually hearing is as you move across those chords change, and if we go into what we call the chromatic scale, there are other notes that work specifically with the other chords, not just A, but with D and E. And that's why sometimes they work really well. Sometimes they don't, but that's where you have to be selective when you're playing, and also you need to kind of know a little safe area of your guitar you can always go back to. So if you always get lost, just come back to it, come back to the safe bit. The safe bit for me would be this little area here. Okay, that's my grounding. Anything else from outside? Anything from outside that is more kind of an artistic choice, so that's up to you if you kind of dare to go into that chromatic scale or not. But as long as you know where you're going and you're coming back to, just it opens your guitar up to lots of different new possibilities. And to be honest, you know, I'm only staying in one area at the moment. I'm not going up and down the guitar because I don't need to. For what I'm doing here, everything's nicely sat in this little area here, 5th fret onwards. So what I would recommend is just use your ears. It is about listening. Improvising is nothing without listening to what you're playing against. And I would recommend just practicing it. Do it very slow. Take your scales individually. So take your minor pentatonic, take your blues scale, and then take a chromatic scale, i.e. just and literally just put them together one by one, piece them together nice and slowly. Do it very slowly when you're improvising over a backing track, so you can just get used to where your fingers are going. Because in the end, your fingers, your muscle memory in your fingers needs to then get used to learning the chromatic way of playing. Because when you learn the scale for the first time, you always tend to stick to within the scale notes and don't come out. So actually you need to train your fingers just to get used to that a little bit more. I hope that helps, and I hope that gives you some new ideas and new pointers with your improvisation. By all means, you can get hold of me, emailing me at jeff@appleyardstudios.co.uk, and just keep checking out the videos, and I'll come back with some more at a later date. Cheers.